Official qualifying to start in exactly 5 minutes from now. Let's get to our live pictures. The sun has come out. Huge crowd, great crowd at Silverstone. A full house there tomorrow. And it just really puts so much pressure. From the start of this weekend, we've honestly come out there, and I think a lot of people would agree that this looked like completely McLaren weekend. If anything, they could have got a 1-2 and just about lapped the field. That is how impressive they've been so far this weekend. They're going to have to rely on Montoya to get right up there, and Kimi Räikkönen to put on another magnificent display to drive through the field.
Well, it's quite possible Kimi Räikkönen may in fact end up with the fastest lap time this afternoon, but then takes the actual 10th place penalty.
Yeah.
Montoya was only 500 slower than Fernando Alonso in free practice session 4. Alonso was quickest with 1 minute 20.0. Montoya was second, 1 minute 20.1. But I think really the aces or the jokers in the pack is the two Toyota drivers, Jarno Trulli and Ralf Schumacher. How are they going to fuel themselves? Are they going to go for the grid position again to then try and have a reasonable race? And then will that force front runners to fuel light?
Well, this is the big question, and it's something that Alistair Gibson from BAR hinted to us on Friday evening. The fact that because everyone got so stuck behind Jarno Trulli, no fault of his own, he had the car that was the best that car could have been. So it was a really difficult race for Jarno. But Alistair Gibson hinted to the fact that everyone is going to be making sure that they try and get ahead of the Toyotas this weekend. Jarno Trulli, Ralf Schumacher, as Vic mentioned, 3rd and 4th in free practice earlier today. There's Juan Pablo Montoya. He's got, I suppose, less pressure now on him, but Kimi Räikkönen, hopefully we'll get pictures of him. He must be furious at the moment. We could see everyone going for pretty light fuel loads during this qualifying session to try and get the best grid position and go for a short stint. That is the running order. It'll be Christian Klein from Felipe Massa, Frisacher, Albers, Montoya will be 5th out. So not in the ideal position. We've seen that he stumbles in those positions as well, Vic.
Yeah, it's not actually the best situation for Juan Pablo Montoya to go out 5th in the session. But we saw that car is such a fantastic car at this moment in time. I don't think it's going to hurt him too much. Then we see Heidfeld going 7th, Montero 8th, Mark Webber 9th, and Takuma Sato, the only driver who hasn't scored points this year, in 10th position.
Then we've got Coulthard, Barrichello, Villeneuve. We had a sterling race at the French Grand Prix last weekend. Ralf Schumacher, watch out from Ralf Schumacher all the way to the top. Fissi, Trulli, Button could go light. I wouldn't be too surprised if we see Button eventually maybe coming out with a net pole, or definitely front row. Michael Schumacher, Räikkönen and Alonso. You watch out for Alonso, he's going to be super quick. The Ferraris, not too sure what they're going to be able to offer. They've got a pretty good position in terms of starting grid, but don't know if they've got the pace.
No, I don't think they've got the one-lap qualifying pace. Michael Schumacher finished in P7, a full 0.8 of a second off Fernando Alonso. But we do feel that they've got some reasonable race pace. But whether that's enough to try and win the race, I don't think so. I think the best Ferrari can hope for is a reasonable score in terms of points.
Yeah.
And it certainly looks like the McLaren team haven't quite finished with Kimi Räikkönen's car.
Doesn't look well. I mean, the 10 positions, perhaps they even decide to start him from the grid. You can see Ron Dennis in the back of the garage there having a look. I'm sure he's really concerned. It's the second week in a row that Kimi Räikkönen has suffered the failure, and begs the question. You always find, Vic, in one team there's always one driver who seems to have all of the problems. Montoya had in the beginning of the season because he played tennis. Now we've got Räikkönen where it really counts, and 2 races in a row, new spec engine from Mercedes-Benz, and 2 failures.
Yeah, 2 failures, and you can see how pressurized the team is. Ron Dennis normally is on the pit wall, but they're standing right behind Kimi Räikkönen's car and try and push this or try and put this car back together. I know that the situation stands that as soon as the green light goes in qualifying, you have to have decided on your wing setups, you have to have decided on your fuel loads, so they don't have much time.
Yeah.
And they've got to put this car together for Räikkönen.
Christian Klein getting ready for Red Bull Racing. He finished 10th on the timesheets this morning, 0.9 of a second down. There's Chris Horner from Red Bull Racing. It looks as though it's going to be a dry qualifying session, which I think is great. It sort of levels it as much as possible for all of the drivers. A huge crowd in at Silverstone, which is really great to see. I think the tragic events of London over the past couple of days has had a big effect on the whole nation. It's great to see a great turnout at Silverstone. You'll notice on the Jordan cars, the nose of their cars has got a black identity on it, which is in tribute to the victims of the bomb blasts. There we go, green light. We're waiting for our commentary team. Christian Klein's got 30 seconds to get out of his garage and onto the actual racetrack. no problem whatsoever. He'll be the first driver out. Little difficult, Vic, for the drivers who got maybe the first 4 or 5 drivers in these conditions, so that could affect Montoya as well.
Yeah, it definitely can affect them. And the big thing about Silverstone, it's such an aerodynamic track in that first sector that you would expect that these guys have to be on it from the start, through Copse, Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel, where we see Clean now going down the Hanger Straight. It's such a very hard series of corners, and to try and extract the maximum, the drivers have to know and be confident in the terms of the grip levels that their cars have, and that the tyres can basically offer. And then again, the important thing is not to miss your brake markers, and to make sure that you put together a good lap.
All right, there we go. There are the track temperatures, air temperatures. Let's cross over to James Allen and Martin Brundle for official qualifying for the British Grand Prix.
10 years, it tells you a bit about Silverstone. It's a track you can overtake on. It's a difficult circuit, a technical circuit. Tactics and events in the race can change everything, and we've already seen the pitch changing very quickly. Kimi Raikkonen and McLaren looking completely dominant in free practice, and then this morning Raikkonen losing an engine for the second time in 2 weekends during the free practice session. He will have to go back 10 places on the grid. It's a big setback for him, but such is the speed he's got in that car, it'll make for a tremendous race tomorrow as he comes through to challenge Alonso. Christian Klein then goes across the start-finish line. It's a high-speed circuit here, Silverstone, 3.19 miles, 17 corners, some of them the most famous high-speed corners in Formula One. The Formula One car covers a mile in just 20 seconds around here, and this is one of the most exciting sections here, the Beckett's complex. And Martin, it's a special feeling going for a flying lap around Silverstone.
Yes, Klein, we saw having a new bed delivered, so he'll be sleeping a little bit better this week, but nonetheless worrying about being first out today, because the track has had other runners on it as ever, and will be to a certain extent an unknown quantity. A racetrack's a living thing. It changes as the various cars take to it and the weather conditions. Klein, the first man to retire at the French Grand Prix last weekend. The double whammy of that, the extra penalty, is then having to run early in qualifying. He's the man out there exploring the racetrack and trying to eke a complete lap out of those Michelins, but they have been hanging on reasonably well.
Well, fastest time this morning in free practice, a 1:20 flat for Fernando Alonso in the Renault. Christian Klein did a 21 flat, so just a second off the pace for Red Bull Racing. Been a decent season for Klein, sharing the drive, of course, with Liuzzi. 3 points finishes so far, and he's 3 all in the races he's contested with David Coulthard. Seems to have kept it all reasonably tidy, using all the track and then a little bit more as well as he goes across the start-finish line to give us an indication of what the track's doing. And it's 1.2 seconds slower than he was this morning.
I think what they're finding, certainly at Red Bull and most of the Michelin runners, they bolt a new set of tyres on where you'd normally expect to go faster. You get extra traction, extra rear grip, but it tends to be in the front sliding across the track, and you really do have to be on the right line with these very high-speed corners. So I think Klein will be moderately satisfied with that, but this morning he did a 21 flat on old tyres, so not the absolute potential of that car. Felipe Massa out for Sauber.
We do see them changing strategy, of course. They go for a fuel load in free practice and perhaps put a little bit more in for qualifying, knowing they're compromised with an early slot. Massa too retired from the French Grand Prix. And interestingly, he's been outperformed by Jacques Villeneuve, his teammate, for the last 2 Grand Prix. So he needs a big result here this weekend. It's 7-3 in qualifying this season to Massa, but Villeneuve on the up at the moment.
When you imagine coming up to corners at over 200 miles an hour, getting your bath laid right back and look across the taps, that's the view a driver's got across it's like looking out of a bathtub, across a little screen, some aerials, and in fact there's so little space in there. When he puts quite a bit of lock on the steering wheel, his hand is in the way of his visibility too. If you watch when he turns into this corner, it is actually quite difficult to pick out your reference points at a high speed, quite flat circuit like this. Into Bridge Corner.
Yep, exciting corner bridge, 150 miles an hour as they plunge under the bridge and make that right-hander. Then into the complex now, Priory, Brooklands, Luffield, and into the great Woodcut corner as well. How do you evaluate this guy's season?
I think he's done okay. I think he's been pretty solid through the year. He's an 8 out of 10 man as far as I'm concerned in terms of more maturity, calmed his driving style down on the steering wheel, that got into a bit of a habit of stabbing away on the throttle pedal, and surprisingly he's gone slower than clean. I expected him to be a bit quicker than the Red Bull.
Yeah, just recently the Sauber does seem to have been a little bit faster than the Red Bull, and been racing against Williams as well. Williams having a few problems at the moment, as we'll be hearing later on. Here's Patrick Friesacker in the Minardi, and Ted Kravitz has some news about him.
And it's an evil handling Minardi, I'm sorry to say. Friesacker's had turn-in understeer and then to power oversteer on the exit. The back of the car's been threatening to break away in the high-speed corners, Martin. They changed the rear suspension. They'd rather give him understeer and have him not fly off the road.
Yeah, that's the worst case scenario, where you've got a bit of understeer and a bit of oversteer, because the breakaway, the snap point where it changes over, you always have to wait for it and adjust your driving, adjust your corner entry speed, and you're driving every metre of the tarmac instead of looking down the road, and you go slower and slower and slower.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that will affect the drivers here. The wind is still fairly gusty, but not as strong as it was this morning in free practice, but the track temperature has gone up 10 degrees since the end of the free practice session, and that's something that they'll have to have considered and made changes to the car. We saw in France last weekend how Ferrari were caught out on race day because the conditions got much, much hotter and the car handled completely differently.
Well, the wind speed's 2.2 metres per second. Not sure whether that's good, bad or indifferent, but what I do know is that it's right into the tail of the cars, turning in to Beckett's and turning into Stowe, two of the most critical areas of the racetrack, and they will lose downforce. They get less downforce in those conditions, so that may affect lap times, maybe giving us a bit of understanding of why we're not seeing such fast times as we expected.
Yeah, the sessions have been slower at the start. Friesacker then just over 3 seconds behind. How do you evaluate his season?
Difficult to know. You can stand out in a Minardi. Paul Stoddart there has given a lot of young drivers a great flying start in Formula One. Alonso, of course. Mark Webber would be another one. Friesacker, I'd have to look at him at a 6 or 7 out of 10, probably a 6 out of 10 so far this season.
Well, he's 6-4 up against this man, his teammate Christian Albers, in qualifying so far this season. Certainly Friesacker's year has been blighted by retirement, 6 retirements from the Grand Prix. Albers on 1 points finish, of course, for both the drivers at Indianapolis, where only 6 cars took part. This young man stepped out of touring cars to come into Formula One. It's always been his dream, and some people would say to move from a winning touring car situation into a back-of-the-grid Formula One is a mistake, but he's enjoying himself, and so far trying to match up with Friesacker.
Yeah, as Jackie Stewart would say, looks like he's trying to hang wallpaper on a windy day with the window open as he's churning away on the steering wheel. And there is that turn-in understeer, the front slides, and then snap oversteer. Turn-in oversteer, turn-in understeer, power oversteer on the exit. Horrible conditions and difficult to change the car for, fundamentally. You can do it takes a long time.
What about a first half-term report for him as we enter the second half of the season, riding on board with Christian Albers? How have you evaluated him?
About the same as Friesacker. I think a couple of times he's really stood out as being very fast, but Friesacker too, so I guess you'd have to say 6 out of 10.
Certainly one or two of his qualifying performances have caught the eye. Always very difficult these days when they carry race fuel in qualifying to evaluate just how good everyone's been, because every 10 kilos of fuel around a track like this is worth about 0.3 of a second. Across the line then goes Christian Albers to go third in front of Friesacker, and that makes it 6-5 in qualifying to Friesacker. So Albers has got one back.
And by a second, a solid and complete second too, is he ahead of his teammate. So a very good effort there from Albers. Didn't look a particularly great lap. He was on the dirt at 1 point, but clearly made the best of a bad job.
Now here's a fellow with some pressure on his shoulders. Teammate Kimi Räikkönen really came here hoping for the victory. McLaren certainly expecting to win. They've been very strong here indeed. Tactically, they now have to think very carefully, because Alonso will be going out last here, Räikkönen second to last. The conditions will be ideal at that point, but from Räikkönen has got to take a 10-place drop on the grid, so he needs Montoya to be involved in Alonso's race tomorrow, whatever happens, because Räikkönen will for sure come through the field from 11th, 12th, wherever he ends up. Look how much faster Montoya is already. We heard Ted thinking that maybe Montoya might go out and grab the pole, whatever, but certainly he will want to be with Alonso on the grid tomorrow. That's really important.
Well, Räikkönen started 5 places behind him last weekend in France and still beat him to the end of the Grand Prix. Montoya, an early retirement with technical problems, but as you say, he's got to get this car into the front row of the grid. And they look like they were a long way away from finishing Räikkönen's car off too, to get it ready for his qualifying effort later on. But the McLaren has been supremely fast around here.
Certainly has, and look at this, 1.4 seconds faster than Christian Klien already. This is going to be a lap in the 1 minute 20 range It could be a low 1 minute 20 as we saw this morning. That would certainly put Montoya right in the hunt for pole position here. Hasn't had one so far in 2005. Across the line he goes out of the famous Woodcut corner, 150, 160 miles an hour, a 120.382, and that is very fast lap indeed from Juan Pablo Montoya. Adrian Newey seems pleased with it, and that's given everyone something to think about. So first 5 out, Montoya quickest at the moment. Space between the laps, just there's so much to talk about. Yeah. They come so thick and fast, don't they? We're going to do it. Yeah, we're going to do it.
We didn't do an out 10.
That's what I mean. It's good time for that's it. Probably a way a bit often with each break and then each 5 cars and putting it out quite quickly. So we should do it on the lap. Welcome back to Silverstone, British Grand Prix qualifying for tomorrow's big event. There's Kimi Räikkönen, who's going to have to drop 10 places on the grid after a forced engine change. Free practice this morning. He was bang favourite for this race, and now it's certainly going to make a spectacle of it tomorrow. Fastest at the moment is Juan Montoya as Narain Kartikeyan goes across the start-finish line, still using the old Jordan, the one they started the season with. There is an updated model on its way, the EJ15B. It's been used in practice, but not yet considered race-worthy. 1 or 2 reliability glitches. On board then with the hyper-energetic Narain Kartikeyan. Certainly made a big impression at the start of the season. Done a lot of racing around Silverstone in British Formula 3, amongst other things, and his early season good. He's 6-4 up against teammate Montero in qualifying. Only 1 top 10 finish so far this season, Martin. Obviously at Indianapolis, where only the 6 Bridgestone runners took the race. And how do you feel his first half season's gone? I
thought he was sensational in the beginning. Then he seemed to lose his way around Monaco time. A bit of trouble within the team as well, I sense, with the senior personnel in the team. So you sense Narain is struggling a bit to keep his head focused. But overall, I think he's impressed. And certainly a solid 7 out of 10 for me.
And what about Montoya? We didn't get marks out of 10 for him.
Montoya, difficult season, and not always made the best of a bad situation, but he's an 8 for me. Montoya, solid, fast from time to time, but really been overshadowed by Kimi Räikkönen.
So Jordan then their factory base. You can almost see it at the top of your picture in that helicopter shot. It's just a few hundred yards behind the main grandstand here at Silverstone, where they've been based ever since Eddie Jordan started the team back in the early 90s. Carter Cahan then crosses the line 3.2 seconds slower than the pace setter Montoya at the moment. That is the top 6 of the 6 cars who have gone out so far. So the two Minardis are buried in the 24s and 25s. Carter Cahan is in the mid 1:23s, and Montoya fastest on a 1:20.3. That's Mario Tyson, the boss of BMW. They've announced they're pulling away from Williams next year. I tell you, one of the funniest things I've seen for a long time was him dancing to Do You Know the Way to Amarillo last night at the Grand Prix ball. A German engineer being shown the moves of Peter Kay on the dance floor. It was a hoot.
What is not a hoot, though, is the way they're performing at the moment. They're really struggling away, aren't they, in terms of pace for some reason with the new aerodynamic pieces, such that my understanding is Heidfeld's car is fully to the previous specification in the middle of a Grand Prix weekend. That's a significant situation.
Yeah, so they're doing effectively a back-to-back test of the car they had before France with the car they took to France, and which didn't work, which wasn't quick enough, and long faces all round. So effectively, with so little time available to test at the moment, Grand Prix back-to-back. Big mistake there for Heidfeld going into the Abbey kink, and effectively they're having to do their testing at a Grand Prix weekend.
That's despite hundreds, if not thousands, of laps of pre-season testing here, all gone to waste as they had to revert. But Heidfeld struggling with the car a bit. Once again, a Michelin runner with some understeer on fresh tyres. The car beginning to come to him now. He did have a slip back there at Club Corner. And this is a little bit frustrating, these last 2 corners. Once again, not quite getting the nose where he wanted it, and so much traction control. As he listened to it, it's cutting half the power out of the engine until it fully straightens up. Not much to do now until he crosses the line now, and he goes second, a fraction ahead of Klein in the Red Bull. Ted has further news.
Well, I'm down at Williams, and I was talking to Sam Michael, the technical director of Williams, earlier. He was calling these teething problems. He says, we know what's wrong on the car, but it's taking some time to fix it. But as you say, a bizarre situation. Sam left it up to the drivers to decide which chassis they go with. Heidfeld went with what he knows, even if the computer, Martin, says this is slower. But Mark Webber is trusting the wind tunnel figures, trusting what the computer tells him, and has stayed with the new aerodynamic package on this chassis. So, as you say, bizarre situation.
Very much looks like somebody's trying to make a point there, doesn't it, James? And teeing up a bit of data to prove or disprove something.
Yeah, certainly. There's been a lot of work. There's Montero coming in. He's the next man out, but he's done a reconnaissance lap, but he's coming straight into the pits. He had an engine change yesterday, so whatever happens, he was going to go back 10 places on the grid, and I guess that he's decided not to do the lap. Ted Kravitz, can you tell us what's going on?
Yes, no, he's just gone straight into the Parc Ferme, and that is because, as you say, the engine, because you get more of a benefit on the new tyres on the Bridgestones, which is what the Jordan is running. But very concerned, very annoyed, actually, they were at Jordan, because, James, it was a failure in the pneumatic air system on this Toyota engine of Montero's yesterday. And, you know, they've had exactly the same problem before. They had it with Carter Cahan in Monaco, so they were extremely irritated that they had that problem reoccur.
There's the second Williams going out of Mark Webber. That's his father Alan there in the striped shirt on the left. Comes all the way from Australia to support him in Grand Prix.
We're getting a bit behind on our marks out of 10, aren't we? Heidfeld would be a 9 for me. Friesacker down there, he made the best of the Indianapolis situation, the man to get on the podium. So he would be a solid 7. Louise is with Juan Pablo Montoya.
Juan Pablo, that looked like a great lap. You couldn't really have dragged much more out of that car, could you?
Maybe a little bit more in the first. First went through the first corner. I thought, wind picked up a bit. I was a little bit careful and went in, and the grip felt like this morning. I thought, that's good. I lost a bit of time. And then when I went into Beckett's, it was the same as before. In the last session, the grip has kind of come back to standard, and it just went in the same, turned left, and it's like, whoa, all the grip gone. So, it's lost a little bit of time there for, I think, probably against the last few runners, but the rest of the lap was pretty good, pushed like hell, and I think the qualifying is really important here, and I think we'll be pretty good.
Do you think that time can be beaten?
Yeah. I'm realistic.
Thanks.
Pole sitter here in 2002, and what he's explaining there is, okay, we haven't been in the car for 2-3 hours now, and suddenly we've got to go out and find out where the track's at, and there's no quarter given. The first 2 turning points here are over 190 miles an hour, and that's what he's saying. I went through and I felt it was okay, and went to the second section and that was okay too. Then I realised I could get on with it, but it's too late by then. I'm giving up on 10 for 2, and that's why he expects the time to be beaten.
Just remind you, the two Williams doing different things. Mark Webber in the upgraded car, Nick Heidfeld in the old car. We saw him making that mistake at Club Corner, cost him a little bit of time. He's second fastest at the moment. Here is Webber then. He's got a very nasty burn on his hip, the size of a couple of tennis balls from where he was injured during the French Grand Prix. They're just overheated in the cockpit. Look at the speed through the Beckett's complex. 156 the early part of it, carrying over 130 through the middle of it, and then out onto the hangar straight. One of the most scintillating moments in any of Formula One racetrack.
Yeah, all he did was just a brief lift of the throttle on the way in, just for the sake of his heart, into the Beckett's. They're absolutely sensational, so not too much wrong with his balance. He is so good on these one-lap situations, and he seems to have just so much confidence, doesn't he, to take straight into that. This lap is working quite nicely so far.
Yeah, the Williams guys say the reason why Mark Webber is so good at this is because he's got a really good feeling for the car, the grip, where the grip is in an uncertain situation. They haven't driven these cars for a few hours. The track temperature's gone up by 10 degrees, as I said, and Webber just has the confidence. He can feel the grip on the outlap and have enough confidence to commit on his flying lap. That's what marks him out as a particularly fine single lap qualifier.
He's about a 10th up on his teammate in the different specifications, BMW Williams, and just this final long right-hander to go. And he's short-shifted to try to get better grip, better traction, less traction control. Did it pay him any benefits at all? Goes over the line, and he's second by 2/10 faster than his teammate. So there's the answer to which Williams will be better around Silverstone in qualifying.
Yep, yes, we did see Heidfeld make that mistake, so the answer is slightly blurred, but I completely agree with you. It's certainly what it seems. And what about marks out of 10 for Webber this season?
Well, you have to say that Heidfeld slightly outshone him in race conditions. Mark's been supreme in single lap, so he's an 8.5 for me.
Well, here's a man who's had a very difficult season, to say the least, Takuma Sato. No points finishes yet in the first half of the year, not even a top 10 finish. And he's 1-6 down to Jenson Button in qualifying. Obviously, BAR have had their share of problems with the 2-race ban following the problems at Imola, but it's not really worked this year for Taku, has it?
It must have been so difficult for both BAR drivers to keep their heads straight and stay focused on the job they have to do. And Taku seems particularly to have been destabilised, doesn't he, with the ban and various incidents. And he's a little more than a 7 at the moment. He's really got to get his year back on track.
Well, his lap is on track to sort of match Nick Heidfeld, who's currently third fastest. BAR would certainly expect to be racing against the BMW Williams team here. And his middle sector is faster than Heidfeld, so if he can keep this going, it might well put him up to second or third place. If he has a strong final sector, he might even be able to knock Webber out of second place. Sato has a lot of experience here, a former British Formula 3 champion, of course, a multiple winner in Formula 3, a very dominant season for him. He knows this track like the back of his hand, and he goes across, and he does indeed knock Mark Webber down, and not by a little either. He's done it by 0.8 of a second. A terrific lap then for Takuma Sato, and that's 0.8 slower than Juan Montoya in second place. Montoya fastest then, Sato second, Webber third, Heidfeld fourth, Klein fifth, Massa sixth, Carter Kane seventh, and Albers in 8th place.
Yes, Jensen's looking at it thinking, okay, that set me a target he can beat, but he'll need a pretty solid lap, because that was a good effort from Takuma Sato, and definitely thrown down the gauntlet to his teammate Jenson Button. Coasting back in, top gear, no throttle, a little more than tick over. He needs to save that fuel to take it into tomorrow's Grand Prix.
One of the things we've seen in free practice, Martin, is that the Michelin tyre, which most of these runners are using, has not been holding on particularly well towards the end of the flying lap, and yet the paradox is getting some temperature into it has also been a struggle for a number of the cars. I think they've been helped a little bit by the track temperature coming up this afternoon, but nevertheless, it's always very difficult to find the right balance, isn't it, going into it, when you've got to commit so much in qualifying.
Yes, because you're asking for a tyre that's good on one flying lap straight out of the box, but that will also get you through the 60 laps of the Grand Prix, and that's asking a lot for the absolute ultimate performance. We're looking back at the various incidents and action from the qualifying so far, and Well, Montoya then, with the sort of lap time we were expecting in the low 1 minute 20s, that's going to give him a solid grid position anyway. But like him, I'd be surprised if it's pole position. But I don't think it was too shabby in the low 1 minute 20s.
Well, Silverstone, as ever, very popular. It's a sellout for tomorrow's Grand Prix. 100,000 people committing to come here and support the pinnacle of British motorsport year. It's a wonderful festival. Helicopters flying in from all over the place. And interestingly, the FIA released some survey results this week saying that Silverstone is the third most popular track in the world amongst sports fans. Over 100,000, almost 100,000 people took part in the survey. Monaco and Spa coming out on top. Silverstone close behind. So for a track that struggles to make it onto the calendar each year, that really is saying something. Louise Goodman has found another driver. I believe it's Nick Heidfeld.
Nick, there are clearly some issues with the new aerodynamic package that made its debut at the French Grand Prix. You're running with the old spec car, as it were. How much input did you have into that decision? Is that you saying, I want to run it, or the team making that decision?
No, it was a team's decision. We tried various things yesterday, and in the end I said, I want to go for it, want to try it. Today it looked quite similar between the old and the new package. We did at the same time this morning. Mark was like 2/10 quicker now, so it doesn't seem that there's a big advantage in it, which we hoped for.
Took me ages to get my 10,000 votes registered for the Silverstone thing on that survey, but obviously paid off. Montoya with 8/10 of a second advantage, and Coulthard is out on his reconnaissance lap. Missed most of this morning's second session because of a gearbox glitch that switched the car off. So he'll be somewhat unsure as to where the track and car are at, but he should know this place well enough to nail one and get himself a reasonable grid position. This car's been looking like a top 10 car all weekend, certainly in race trim, but they've struggled to really fully deliver up in qualifying trim. But they look like they could well be on for some points tomorrow if they can keep this kind of speed, as they had a great speed last weekend also in Manicourt, just didn't show up because of a poor grid slot.
That's right, qualifying was a bit of a struggle for them in Manicourt last weekend. David Coulthard then re-signed for the 2006 season. That's a real boost for him. The air horns going, supporting him around the track.
Oh, and another man just to have to take a tiny lift into there, and the front of the car working okay so far. A little bit of understeer through the exit. He'll have to just delay getting on the throttle. Diagonal the straight now to bring it to the left-hand side, about 150 metres before Stowe Corner. There it is, the glorious Stowe just ahead of you. Take a late apex. You've got to be touching just towards the end, and a little bit of oversteer through the middle of the corner. He would have expected that. A blind braking zone down into the first part of Club. Now you have to hurry up and wait through the exit. You can run wide or take a tighter line but get more traction control. Again, the car appearing to work well. A solid first sector time, not that spectacular. Launch it through the Abbey chicane. Wow, that's a lot of curb, DC. Straighten it up. There's a bit of extra space on the outside. Now, not a hint of throttle lift through Bridge Corner. The first part of the complex, about 100 miles an hour, up to 140. Bring it down to 70. Try to cheat across the inside of the curb. Straighten it up for maximum acceleration. Least amount of traction control. Wait. Now you can see it. Nail it. And over the line. 4th, 5th and 6th. He won't need top gear before he's completed this lap. Straight off the throttle to save the fuel. And he goes P4, just ahead of Heidfeld and Klein.
He splits the Williams. That's a super lap from David Coulthard. We really enjoyed that one on board most of the way around. And, well, that Beckett's complex is something. It really does take the breath away every time. You see the car just wiggling. That's the oversteer that Martin was talking about. The back of the car just wanting to just move out a little bit. So Coulthard really has exceeded expectations. As I said before, he's confirmed with the team for the 2006 season. So that's great stability for them and for him going forward. Real confidence on both sides. He's really pushing this team forward with 17 points so far this season. 6 points finishes. Looking good for another one here tomorrow. Plenty of Ferrari fans here this weekend to see Rubens Barrichello. Ferrari scratching their heads still a little bit about where the pace went on race day in France last weekend. It just was not there after Michael Schumacher stuck the car third on the grid. And Rubens Barrichello into his lap. 4 podiums so far this season, just 11 points behind Michael Schumacher. You feel like it's more because it seems Schumacher has done more with this car than Barrichello, but it is still just the 11 points.
Yes, if ever you think Barrichello's going to beat Schumacher, it's here at Silverstone. He does seem so good around here, doesn't he? He knows the place anyway because he came through the British National Series, and he had a very good first sector, just about matching current comfortable pole sitter Montoya. So Barrichello in the middle of a handy lap as he heads up to the Abbey chicane. About 185 miles an hour, and there's a lot of grip in there, and it's a bit of a Yahoo moment as you just stamp on the throttle pedal and head down towards Bridge Corner. It's got a slight bit of banking in it to help you round, and still he's staying pretty close to Montoya. This will be a comfortable P2 at the moment.
Yeah, had a dramatic win back here in 2003. Remember passing Kimi Räikkönen at huge speed through Bridge Corner. A very heroic move that was. Certainly his finest hour in a Formula One car. Good memories of Silverstone across the line. Is today going to be a good memory? Well, it's certainly a pretty competitive lap from Barrichello. Just over half a second shy of Montoya. How would you evaluate Barrichello's season? How many out of 10 for him?
I'm just going to evaluate the end of the lap. It was horrible. The car looked truly horrible through the last two corners, like it was really giving up its grip. Rubens, I think he's done well, kept his head down, his mouth shut. Michael, he should have beaten Michael in Indianapolis and didn't do it. Again, he's an 8.5. The same as Coulthard, actually. I'd give DC an 8.5 for a very, very solid season and a couple of races that are some of the best I've ever seen him drive. But Ted has some news.
Yeah, down at Sauber, some of our more regular viewers might notice that the Sauber have got new front wings here this weekend. They only arrived this morning because they were held up in customs on their way from Switzerland, which is weird. I'm not quite sure what customs officers thought they were going to hide in there or something. But anyway, they only arrived this morning, and it's more or less a copy of the Ferrari front wing. But they tested it in Jerez and it works, so they put it on.
Most unusual to be putting pieces on. I mean, you're driving, whenever you step over the side of a Formula One car, you're driving a living prototype. They're always changing, but not often bolting on new front wings when you're so far into a Grand Prix weekend.
Well, this has been the fastest pace of development ever seen in Formula One. The amount of changes each team has made to its car throughout the year has been totally dramatic. Some of the cars completely transformed since the first Grand Prix in Australia back in March. On board then with Jacques Villeneuve, twice a winner here at Silverstone in his Williams days. Recently, as I said, last couple of Grand Prix outshone Felipe Massa. Massa currently 8th on a 1:22.4. Had that impediment of having to go out early in qualifying. Little bit of a lock-up then for Villeneuve front left, but it's been a pretty tidy lap so far. He is matched his teammate in the first sector. He's quicker than the second sector. It's going to be quicker than Massa this lap. It's going to be 6-7, somewhere around there. Fourth, it's a brilliant final sector for Jacques Villeneuve. He goes fourth behind Montoya, Barrichello, Sato. Then it's Villeneuve fourth, Webber fifth, and Coulthard in sixth place.
I'm surprised they're not clapping and cheering a bit louder than that. We don't know what his fuel load is, of course, but Villeneuve's really beginning to get on terms, isn't he, with his car and this season? And of course, BMW are taking over the team. They're fighting for a slot there, and in the assumption that BMW could, or if they can, contractually take Heidfeld with them, you've got to assume there may be only one slot left for Villeneuve and Massa, and that's a great response from Jacques Villeneuve.
And marks out of 10 for his first half year, briefly.
His first quarter of year was dismal, wasn't it? But it's 7.5, I would say, for JV.
Okay, here's Ralf Schumacher, first of the two Toyotas we've seen here this afternoon. Caught a quick word with Mike Gascoigne, the technical director, who's transformed this team in the last couple of seasons into a competitive front-running outfit. Based in Cologne, of course, Gascoigne commuting from his home in Oxfordshire. And Ralf Schumacher, the only one of the Michelin runners to go with the hard tyre here at Silverstone this weekend. Everybody else has gone with a softer tyre. And Ralf doesn't seem to have any problems getting temperature into it, I'm told. And he's certainly been looking pretty racy all weekend. He's certainly carrying an enormous amount of speed there into Priory in 90-mile-an-hour corner. And he's monstering Brooklands as well. That's a 60-mile-an-hour corner. Looks substantially faster behind the wheel of this Toyota. Out of left field, just waiting to pick up the throttle and go across Woodcote corner, 160 miles an hour as he swings into the view of the main grandstand crowd here. And he goes fourth, dropping Villeneuve back into fifth place. There you can see the top six, and it's extremely tight between Barrichello, Sato, Ralf Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve. Just four cars separated by 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, slower than Sato, surprisingly. The Toyotas look very fast this morning. Jarno Trulli, the qualifying specialist, yet to come in the other Toyota. But it's so frustrating not really knowing how much fuel. I don't say that tomorrow because I like the uncertainty of it all, but in qualifying it's so difficult to read who's getting the job done and who's not. And Fisichella is the fastest man on the track in the final sector. That's his out lap. So he's pretty much on it, isn't he?
Yeah, certainly got to push hard on the outlap to get the temperature into the tyres. Different teams have been experiencing that problem. This is only the 4th time this season that Giancarlo Fisichella has had a decent qualifying slot, because he's had a lot of retirements and problems, which has meant he's gone out early on Saturday and then he's been playing catch-up for the rest of the weekend. And look at this, he's already ahead of Juan Montoya. It's between Renault and McLaren here this weekend for the victory, as it has been for most of this season so far. The form book in pre-season testing carried through the first half of the championship, but it's really all been Alonso and Raikkonen. It's not been Fisichella and Montoya, and yet here in qualifying so far at Silverstone, it is between Montoya and Fisichella. And Fisichella on target to try and knock Montoya off that provisional pole slot.
The car looks to be working well, it's nicely balanced, but I don't think he made the apex in the first part of the Abbey chicane, and that's why he's lost the time. Can he improve in these final 2 corners? 3/3 of a second's a lot to ask, especially when you're counter-steering into the corner and losing even more time. So at the end of the lap's not been as good. Surely it's a P2 rather than a P1 for Fisichella, and in fact it was so bad at the end, it was P3's drop behind Barrichello. That lap absolutely fell apart.
And that was what I was saying earlier on about some of the Michelins, the final sector, the tyres have been going away. We saw that Fisichella was the fastest man on the track on his outlap towards the end. Martin spotted that, and it obviously took a bit too much out of the tyre, because that final sector was the one that let him down.
Yeah, you've got a certain amount of performance with the freshness of the new tyres, and you've got to make sure you're using it in the right part, and he was too hot out of the box, too hot out of the pit lane. And did he pay the price toward? That's cost him at least a row, if not 2 rows on the grid, I'd imagine. Fisichella with a difficult season. I don't think we didn't give a mark for Ralph, did we? Which he's the mystery man. He disappears from time to time. Ralph's kind of a 7.5. Fisichella, who started the year with a solid victory in slightly lucky circumstances, but boy did he drive nicely. Since then he's had a difficult time, an unlucky time. Not sure he's absolutely been able to make the best of it. So Fizzy's an 8 for me so far this season.
Yeah, Giancarlo Fisichella, 9th in the World Championship at the moment, 4 points finishes, but also 4 retirements. As I say, it's really compromised him in qualifying. It's all had a knock-on effect of this new rules package for 2005. Here's David Coulthard then. He's currently 8th fastest, and he's talking with Louise Goodman.
Nice one, David.
Thank you. It was actually, it didn't start that well. We're in a routine of going 6th, 7th for the turn 1 and then back down to 6th again, but it didn't happen, and there's nothing worse as a driver. You're approaching a corner expecting the shift, and then it didn't come, so I compromised a little bit in the first turn, but rest of the lap, not too bad, certainly better than we had yesterday.
Your car, generally speaking, other than a slight glitch this morning, does look to be pretty competitive here.
Yeah, I think yesterday we looked pretty strong, and I would expect that pace to come back a little bit in the race, but I think you can see from the sort of times people are doing in quali, as much as we can expect to be somewhere in the same area in fuel, then we're down a little bit, so that's definitely our weak area still.
Yes, obviously still got some kind of gearbox glitch. You were saying it didn't go up to top gear going into turn 1, so therefore a little bit out of sync to having to try to pull down the gear. But the car goes into Parc Fermé this evening, so it's not that easy now to start getting in and fixing those problems.
Well, I was in the Red Bull garage after pre-practice this morning with my old man, and looking at the car, and they were changing just about everything they could except the engine on that, because obviously the engine change would mean a 10-place penalty. Trying to figure out why this morning it went from 6th to 7th, and then literally the engine just cut out. It was some form of electrical glitch. As I said before, they changed everything, but clearly there's something still going on as he looks for top gear.
Yeah, it could be a wiring loom, sometimes on the steering wheel. You're obviously just seeing a replay of slightly earlier action. Ted has some news.
I'm down at BAR. Jenson Button sitting in the car, impassive, just putting on his white gloves. And I can tell you, Martin, he's been struggling with understeer this morning. Both BARs struggling with understeer on the first flying lap. But crucially, Jenson's been able to handle it better than Takuma Sato. Now, in the morning practice, they've added as much front downforce as they possibly can, which is what you do when you want to get rid of understeer. Let's see whether it works for Jenson Button after Jarno Trulli's lap.
Yes, Trulli now just beginning his hot lap. Jenson then will be released from the pits behind Trulli once he's past the pit exit. And surely we should be seeing a spectacular lap time here.
Yep, here's Jarno Trulli. He's been pretty sensational, particularly in qualifying this season, and races too. 6 points finishes, 3 of which on the podium, and 3 lost podiums, things like the brake failure in Canada when he was heading for yet another podium this season. It's been a real turnaround year this so far for Jarno Trulli, but he won't want to remember last year's Silverstone, where he had a huge suspension failure in the Renault and a big crash as a result of it. Here he is though, 3/100ths of a second only behind Juan Montoya. And why is this guy so quick on a single lap, Martin?
Because he's accurate and he's on the throttle hard and early, and he's got it nicely set up. His race pace doesn't always work out. There's a bit of a mobile chicane, wasn't he, last weekend in Manicourt? But just flexing his fingers, getting ready for probably 5 downshifts and hanging on to the edge of that sawtooth curve, and already full throttle. An upshift right in the heart of, I mean, that's, imagine when you used to have to do that with a gear stick in your hand, trying to shift in a corner with all of those loading. But he's now beginning to fight the car as the tyres, the fresh grip of the new tyres is going away from him. Now he's going to have to wrestle it to the finish.
Yeah, this final sector problem for the Michelin seems to have affected Jarno Trulli as well. What's he done as he goes across the start-finish line? He goes second, and in fact, that is a very impressive lap indeed from Jarno Trulli. It looked like he was losing a little bit in that final sector, but it didn't show up on the stopwatch, did it? That was the quickest final sector anybody has done so far, and that puts Toyota provisionally on the front row of the grid as the BAR mechanics have a laugh down there in the garage. They're based just a few miles away from here in Brackley. And here is Britain's, well, England's number 1. Certainly David Coulthard would argue with that from a British perspective, but a lot of fans here for Jenson Button, particularly after last year. Listen to the crowd as he goes into the 160 miles an hour Copse corner. Here we are on board then with Jenson Button. Sato is in 5th place at the moment on a 1:21.1, and Jenson will want to get himself up amongst the front runners here.
Car with looking reasonably soft and lots of roll at the back, but Jenson's so smooth you sometimes wonder if this is the hot lap or the out lap. He just doesn't hustle the car. He likes to just flow with it and keep the minimum speed up. He's lost a fraction on Montoya and Trulli, but he's 2/10ths faster than his teammate in the first sector. A nice wide turn in so he can get the car straight nice and early for the second part of Club Corner, and the back end just trying to step out a little bit as he brings it to the right hand side for the Abbey chicane. I bet he doesn't take as much curb as the others because that's just not his driving style, and that's why he can cope with a bit more understeer. All the cars easily full throttle now through a bridge corner, and again a lovely wide entry into the final part of the complex, carrying tremendous speed. He's the fastest man so far.
Yep, 2 sectors down, just 1 to go. Around about 20 seconds separating Jenson Button from possibly pole position on his home soil. The Union Jacks are flying in the grandstands below us as he comes out of Woodcote and goes across the line, and he goes fastest! What a lap from Jenson Button! The crowd love it. The mechanics love it too. A 1:20.2 for Jenson Button. I'd love to hear what he's got to say to his team at the moment, but it's not all over yet. We've still got Michael Schumacher, Kimi Räikkönen. We know we'll have to go back 10 places from wherever he qualifies, and Alonso as well. He could, either Schumacher or Alonso could nick the pole from Jenson Button. If he could get it, it would be his second this season and his first on home soil. That was the reaction from the crowd to a really splendid lap from Jenson.
Yes, he built on it, and there were times there where he was a good half a car's width away from the line that the other drivers are taking, and he never looked ragged. He just had it under control and just took nice wide entry points, got it straightened up and got tremendous acceleration. Michael Schumacher on track for his hot lap.
So going to try and steal the pole away from Button before he does. Quickly marks out of 10 for Jenson Button first half year.
Again, another driver who's not really had chance to show us anything. He's really coming on strong now though, isn't he? But an 8.5 if you look at the first half season in total.
Yeah, kept his head in BAR's difficulties, doing very well indeed, Jenson Button. Here though is the 7 times world champion, 3 times a winner here at Silverstone, Michael Schumacher, into the Stowe corner where he had his accident many years ago. 1/1000th of a second down, and he's trying so hard with this car.
The problem he's got there is his left-hand tyres are now dirty, and he'll have to fight the car harder, and he'll be slightly slower through this right-hander, the second part of Club. So a tenth or two just ebbing away there.
He's using a different tyre from Jenson Button. Button on the Michelin, of course. Ferrari using the Bridgestone tyre here this weekend. They're using the harder compound Bridgestone as well, so it has different characteristics from the Michelin. And that, you see, is how much Michael Schumacher has lost in the middle sector. He was just a thousandth down after the first. Now he's lost half a second in the middle sector. That means Button has got one man separating him from pole position. A couple of bites of the cherry in the final corner from Michael Schumacher as he comes out of Woodcote corner and goes for the line. Plenty of Ferrari support here. Plenty of people love him, but they won't love that final sector, Martin.
No, it was all at sea. He lost something in the middle of the lap, and then like Barrichello in the sister Ferrari, all at sea, but he didn't make as good a job of handling it. So Michael then way down the field. It looked horrible through the last two corners, and now
there's Kimi Räikkönen starting his flying lap into Copse corner. Here's a man with an awful lot on his mind. Whatever happens here, he's going to have to go 10 places back on the grid. Same scenario as the French Grand Prix last weekend. He hangs it all out because he wants to be as far up the grid as he possibly can be. He'll want to see P1 at the end of this lap because that'll mean P11 and an opportunity to attack. He knows his teammate Montoya is going to be at the front of the grid tomorrow. It is all to play for tactically, and Räikkönen is sticking it on the line here. He's almost 0.4 of a second faster than Jenson Button. Remember though, he'll go 10 places back from wherever he gets.
Well wide in Stowe corner, just about got away with it, but he would have given a little bit away there, but so fast down to the first sector. But surely he's not going to go light. He's got to carry some fuel to get him a good distance into this Grand Prix. But you're right, P11 would be the best, would at least save him something. He was 13th on the grid last weekend, finished second. If he can get up to 11th, he's got a half a chance still of winning the Grand Prix. Different line altogether to Button through the final part of the complex, but still a third of a second up.
This is to put pressure on Alonso, who's now warming up for his flying lap. He'll be the last man to go. He'll be told what Räikkönen's done. He wants to put as much pressure as he possibly can on him to remind him he'll come through the field tomorrow. This has been a special one from Kimi Räikkönen. He goes across the line just under 0.3 of a second ahead of Jenson Button, and Ron Dennis loves it. Now last weekend, Martin, remember in France, he was right up the front of the grid, and it turned out he went 9 laps longer in the race than the guys he was racing against. So quick was he in qualifying. It really was an amazing effort. I wonder if he's done the same here again today and carrying that extra fuel. We'll find out in the Grand Prix tomorrow. Here's a man with who's going to try and snatch the pole then from Jenson Button.
Well, Räikkönen's a 10 out of 10 driver for this year, no doubt about it, and so is this man, Fernando Alonso. He's been supreme. He's managed to keep himself in the hunt at every kind of racetrack all over the world that we've been so far this year. Always with carrying a bundle of understeer, the front sliding around, but somehow he manages to keep good apex speed at the same time. Don't know how, but it works for him.
Well, he's a 10th down on Räikkönen after one sector. Very quickly, Michael Schumacher, we missed him out. Marks out of 10. People at home will want to know what you think.
9 for Michael. I think he's put in some stellar performances from time to time, but Alonso now, can he beat Button? I tell you what, that's going to be close, James.
It certainly is. Jenson Button, a 1:20.207, and Alonso is 0.3 faster than him after the first sector, so he certainly was on target after sector 1. He's coming towards the end of sector 2, rips underneath bridge, a blur to all the people standing underneath, and he's a 100th up on Räikkönen. Never mind Jenson Button. This looks like it's going to nick the pole away from Jenson Button. Remember, Räikkönen will go back 10 places. This has been another one of those laps from Fernando Alonso, who seems to qualify so very well. He's never raced here well. 10th is his best result. This is to set himself up for tomorrow for victory at Silverstone. He goes across the line 0.02 of a second faster than Kimi Räikkönen, and that is a net pole. He takes it away from Jenson Button. Kimi Räikkönen will go down to 12th on the grid, so it was a double whammy as far as Kimi Räikkönen's concerned. And live now is a disappointed man, I imagine, Jenson Button. He is still on the front row of the grid, but it isn't pole for his home Grand Prix, Louise.
Gents, he's nicked your pole.
I know, it's better than I imagined anyway. I thought we'd be probably on the second row. That was my aim, so It's good to be on the first row. Räikkönen's got to go back to 12th on the grid, so it's not going to help his chances.
So you're not too disappointed, and rightly so, because you've got a fantastic chance starting from there, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we knew that the Renaults would be good competition and the McLarens would also, but to be on the front row, I'm very happy with. We didn't actually expect to be on the front row, so yeah, I'm pretty chuffed and looking forward to tomorrow.
We obviously saw Kimi come through from a relatively low grid position at the last race. Do you think he'll be doing the same again, or do you think it's really going to be Fernando that you're battling against?
I think it will be very quick. I don't think their plan went quite as they wanted to with McLaren. I'm sure they wanted Montoya on pole to slow everyone down, but that hasn't happened. So we're more competitive here as well than Manicourt. So he's going to have to fight his way past rather than having it easy like it was in Manicourt.
Well done.
Cheers.
Great result for Jenson Button. He's on the front row of the grid for tomorrow's British Grand Prix. Trust me, it's going to be a thriller. With Räikkönen coming through the field, he's got a very fast car indeed. It's going to be a thriller.
Well, you got the two, you got to say, best drivers at the moment in terms of form for 2005. Kimi Räikkönen and Fernando Alonso. Another tragedy, Vic, in the sense that we're not going to see them lining up next to each other.
Well, it all depends on the race, but superb laps from both of them. We obviously don't know what sort of fuel levels they basically have in the car. But I have to say as well, I think a very good lap from Juan Pablo Montoya to finish in P4 position. But really, it looks like the two protagonists at the top of the leaderboard, Fernando Alonso and Kimi Räikkönen, streets ahead of everybody else.
Brilliant. And tomorrow it's going to be really exciting watching Fernando Alonso because Montoya will be released. He'll be able to have a go. I've got a feeling that the likes of Alonso and Button, similar kind of fuel loads, maybe 2 laps between them. Alonso maybe a little bit heavier. But the way McLaren has been in terms of their form, you've got to believe Montoya's heavy. Räikkönen's going to start down in 12th. He's also going to be heavy, similar to kind of France. So make his way through the field again. So we're in for an awesome race. But at least we've got somebody who, I think between Button, Montoya and Alonso, really going to keep it pretty tight in the first 10-15 laps of the race.
I think so, and I think quite a few of the front runners fueled a bit light to get in front of the Toyotas. And we can see Fernando Alonso, the car looked very good on direction changes. It didn't have too much of a problem, had a slight little error in one of the corners in sector 2, a bit of oversteer under braking. But other than that, the car looked simply superb. Jenson Button did a fantastic lap. He didn't even seem to be fast.
Yeah.
But he just built up to that lap as it progressed. The car looks good. Again, fuel level is the issue. I think we can say that the two McLarens have got the heaviest fuel loads, and they'll probably pit a good 5 or 6 laps later than Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button.
There we go. There is the pole man yet again. It's his 4th pole for the 2005 seasons. He's won 5 times as well, and he's only 23 years old. Fernando Alonso setting the world alight. Another brilliant result for the Renault team, starting from pole in for the British Grand Prix. Tomorrow is Jenson Button in the background, all waiting to go up to the interview rooms. Moving down in 5th place, another brilliant lap from Jarno Trulli. Everybody behind him, I suppose, is panicking as they don't want to get stuck behind him, but it's not his fault. He's got a car there, and he's great over the one lap. In a race, pacer just falls away, but it's not really him. I mean, he's going as fast as he can.
Yeah, he's going as fast as he can. He drives the car to the maximum capability of the car. It's very good over one lap qualifying. The issue is that it doesn't really last the race distance. I must say that it's quite surprising that they said all the Michelin runners chose the soft tyre combination, with the exception of Jarno Trulli and Ralf Schumacher. And watch for them. I think they might actually have a reasonable race. And we saw in free practice that the Renault had a bit of oversteer after 3 or 4 laps, and whether that's going to hurt them or not, we're not too sure.
There you go. FIA officials organisers trying to get the drivers out to acknowledge the crowd now up into the interview room. Want to hear what the 3 of them had to say, but you've got to just feel desperately sorry for Kimi Räikkönen. A brilliant lap. Just as we saw in Manicourt a week ago, he went 9 laps longer than anybody else. More than likely the same kind of strategy. Just shows that McLaren is just fantastic, but just doesn't have the reliability. Last week we saw Montoya retiring with a mechanical failure. This week another mechanical failure before qualifying. They've got to get that right, otherwise they're never going to challenge Renault.
No, I don't think so. And what is quite impressive is Renault came to this race meeting saying they're not quite there yet. And look at them now. They are in P1. fantastic lap. When Raikkonen did his 1 minute 19.9, we thought that was it. And Fernando Alonso equaled him and bettered him. Did a fantastic job. The Renault looks simply superb.
Yeah.
And I think it just is a shame that we can't have the top two in the World Championship fighting it out to the end of the race. But then again, it depends how the strategies play itself out. And maybe after the first pit stop, we could have a situation where Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso are really fighting it out tooth and nail for the World Championship, and that's what we want to see. We want to see this thing go down to the wire, and the top two drivers fighting it out.
I think we are going to see that tomorrow. A little bit of concern with the Renault. It seems to be battling with quite a little bit of oversteer, Vic, as the tyres sort of wear on. We've noticed that in the free practice session, so that could affect the durability of the tyres.
Yeah, I think so, and we saw it especially in the final sector. Both Giancarlo Fisichella and Fernando Alonso had a bit of off-track excursions. Even though the car is fast, it could be that it's wearing its rear tyres out slightly more than expected. And the nature of the track is a lot of high-speed corners, direction changes, and it does wear out the rear tyres. But overall, we have to say a very good job from Renault. Just a pity Giancarlo Fisichella is so far off the pace from Renault. And if you look at their arch rivals, basically we've seen Juan Pablo Montoya in P4, Kimi Raikkonen in P2, which will become P12 tomorrow.
There we go, but it would have been P2 versus P4 versus P1 versus P7. That's where Fisichella unfortunately ended up just behind the first Bridgestone run of Rubens Barrichello. You've got to say, a pretty decent lap. Michael Schumacher's lap went completely away from him. He was very fast in the first sector and then lost a second over the last two sectors.
Yeah, no, the car didn't look at all good. It didn't look like it was glued to the track. I think you mentioned that it seemed to be very light, and we don't know what sort of fuel load.
It just didn't seem light. It just didn't seem as though it was grabbing onto the ground. You know, there didn't seem to be enough downforce in that car.
Yeah, and it didn't hook up the corners. It didn't hook up the apexes. He ran very wide out at the start of sector 2 onto the dirt, which hurt his tyres again. So it wasn't a very neat lap, and that normally is an indication of a car that's not working particularly well. And right now, all the cars go into Parc Fermé, and there's not much that they can do for the rest of the weekend. This is what we've got.
Just waiting for our interviews for the top 3 qualifiers for tomorrow's British Grand Prix, going down the rest of it. And you mentioned Juan Pablo Montoya's lap. I mean, he was 5th out in the session. Terrific job. He'll start off, he'll get a net 3rd position start tomorrow. So off the line tomorrow is going to be awesome.
Yeah, and he's right behind Fernando Alonso. We know that that Alonso and Fisichella will be quick off the line, but Montoya won't be too shabby. He'll be right there. And then it's down to who's got the faster race car now. And we've seen over the past couple of races, McLaren seem to be very good over race pace. They normally run the softer compound tyre, but we've heard already that that the rest of the teams, including Renault, have opted for the softer tyre, and that will indicate that they're quite confident that they've got the race pace and that they will look after the tyres, even though we've seen that the car does seem to develop a bit of oversteer towards the end of their 4 or 5 lap stints, as we saw in the free practice session. So I think it's still not over yet. Reliability will come into it, and tyre management is going to come into it.
And the strategies, of course, tomorrow where it'll all unfold. So seems to be a little bit of work in Parc Fermé conditions, surrounded by officials on that Renault car. Doesn't look too serious. Maybe a couple of little adjustments. Taking extraordinarily long to get to the interviews with the 3 drivers. Going down the field from where they saw Christian Klein put in a really good performance, first man out there, just a tenth slower than the likes of David Coulthard.
Yeah, I thought he performed very well, and if you remember, he was the first guy out, didn't have a particularly good a good race in France. So I thought his lap was very good if you consider that a track normally rubbers in probably about good 4 or 5 tenths over the course of a session. So he probably would have matched David Coulthard. And I think he's really surprised a lot of people this year. And you heard Martin Brundle giving drivers certain marks out of 10.
Yeah.
And I think Christian Klein is one of those slightly better than expected performers.
Done very, very well. Also, if you look at the Sauber team, well, let's have a listen to what the 3 drivers have to say.
For the Foster's British Grand Prix, 3rd quickest for Lucky Strike, BAR Honda, Britain's Jenson Button. 2nd fastest for West McLaren Mercedes, Kimi Raikkonen. And on the pole for the 4th time this year for the Mild 7 Renault team, Fernando Alonso. Fernando looked like a great lap in every sector.
Yeah, it was really, really good. A little bit unexpected, this pole position, but the car this morning felt much better than yesterday. The team did an incredible job last night with some different changes we did, and the car fell straight away quite quick this morning. So I was P1 in the last session in P4. So I think we were in qualifying very confident, but probably not that confident to get the pole. But it's obviously a great result for us.
Well, coming off a great result, obviously Renault's home Grand Prix in France, but this in some ways is another home race for you. Talk about the atmosphere here and coming to Silverstone, leading the championship as you are.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Obviously, the 70% of the team are English people, so for us it's also the home Grand Prix here in Silverstone for all the guys. They sleep at home, half of the people, so it's a really interesting Grand Prix for everybody in the team. And always when we are here, the drivers, all the members of the team, we are together in the factory a few days before the Grand Prix. So I think the atmosphere there was fantastic because we are leading both championships, and so far the weekend started in a good way as well. So everything that we can ask, we have it.
And your thoughts on the race tomorrow? Strategy? Obviously, Kimi may be on a different fuel load.
Yeah, I think we will have again different strategies. All the teams, I think, maybe more similar here than in many courses that we saw some people doing very different strategies. But anyway, the race is always very long here in Silverstone. It can happen anything. Hopefully the weather will stay constant and dry, and we can have a good race. But I'm really confident for sure. What happened to Kimi is not fair, and I think will be again problems for him. But we have to do our race, our maximum, like we did in quali, and so far we have the pole on the pocket.
Thank you, Fernando. Kimi, commiserations to you for the second successive race. An oil pump problem this morning is necessitating an engine change and having to take that 10-place penalty on the grid.
It's not the ideal situation again, but it's nothing what I can do. I just can drive as quickly as I can, and then we see tomorrow what happens. But for sure, it's not the way to try to win the championship. If you take every time 10 places penalty, so we're not that quick in the end to give so much to the other guys.
Well, we saw in France your strategy there, running a lot of fuel in that first stint there. You picked up some places as they all came into the pits. What's it going to be like tomorrow?
We will see what happens, but it really depends what happens in the front. If the front people will not disappear as quickly as in France, I think so. We have very strong position, but I don't know what they are doing. We only know what we are doing. So I think so. We have had very good car here always, and the car was pretty good today. So let's wait and see.
Given the setup you had for qualifying, your lap looked pretty good.
Yeah, I ran wide on one of the quick corners on the end of the back straight because I think so the biggest problem in here was that what happened to us, it happened in the last practice, and then we didn't put the new tires, and it was really difficult to know how the car will be in the qualifying. We were guessing a little bit, and at least it went pretty much okay, and the car was not too bad, so it was okay.
Thank you very much, Kimi. Well, Jensen, here we are at the British Grand Prix, and you're on the front row.
Yeah, it's a great feeling. We didn't quite expect it, so it's fantastic to be at the front. I think we can do some pretty good things from there.
Everyone wants to know, what do you think you can actually do? How quick is the car? It looked to be a little bit down on the first sector there, but very quick relative to the Renault sectors 2 and 3.
Yeah, we've struggled a little bit through Beckett's and also Kopp's turn 1, so that is a little bit of a worry for the race. But apart from that, the car's been working very well in low-speed corners and the rest of the high-speed corners around the circuit. So, it's nice to be in this position and to be at the front, able to fight with the Renaults and the McLarens, because we've had a pretty tough time of it. So, yeah, it's nice to be up there, and I think it can only get better from there, I think.
And the British crowd behind you, as they will be tomorrow?
They've been great. It's great to have so many fans here. I've never... Well, there's only one time this year that I've seen a crowd like this, and that was in Barcelona. So it's great to see so many fans out there, not just British, but from all around the world. So,
yeah, hopefully we can put on a good show for them, and I'm sure we can do that.
We look forward to it very much indeed. Thank you very much. Just turning to you finally, Fernando, your thoughts on this Grand Prix in the context of some events that have happened in London over the last couple of days. If you could perhaps just talk to us in terms of Formula One's approach to this tragedy.
Yeah, I think all of us, we are very sad, and this is not good at all. I think what happened in London the last few days, I think for all Formula One people, we want to express our respect for all the people, the victims, the family, and put a good show also for them tomorrow. I think the sport, especially Formula One, cannot do much in these occasions, but what is in our hands, we will do it tomorrow.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, if we could have some words from